Westerners are still, amazingly, it seems to me, Europeans less so than Americans, but are still very naive about Islam.
We had one of these Islamic attacks in the UK. The victims are forgotten straight away. The perpetrator is somehow made to be a victim themselves, but they're just worshipping a death cult that loves death more than we love life. And that's because nobody in this country has the balls to stand up and call a spade a spade. Call it what it is. It is a cult of death.
A lighter topic, and one that apparently some people get off on. I don't understand this. Some woman who has an OnlyFans page for her feet.
The OnlyFans phenomenon, which is essentially emblematic of, the death of any form of motivation, which is just like, well, I'll just make money out of porn, essentially. It's easier. I can make money in my sleep, as they say.
Welcome to another episode of WTF. Now, you may be thinking that means something very naughty, but it actually means the world of Taunton and Fox. And I've actually been thinking about the name, Lawrence. And, I don't think we've ever really clarified the name, because there's been the world according to Taunton and Fox, the world of Taunton and Fox. But I've even thought that maybe it should be a plural, worlds of Taunton and Fox. What say you?
Well, I just was contacted by the chief editor of the Oxford English Dictionary this morning, and they've said that their definition, WTF, goes in as the world according to Taunton and Fox. I mean, it'd be a bit of a deal if I asked him to change it now, especially seeing as he changed it from the original acronym anyway. So I'm sorry, you're stuck with it.
Yeah, well, there we go. And that would probably be Mr. Murray, played by Mel Gibson in the wonderful film, The Professor and the Madman, which you appear in.
I do.
Which is about the making of the Oxford English Dictionary.
I know.
Films, by the way, that you've told me you haven't even watched.
I haven't watched. I didn't watch myself, and I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I'm gonna tell you this in public. I wonder how it will go. Don't think I've ever told it to you in private. But it's quite a private thing, so I'll say it in public just because why not? It is the world according to Taunton and Fox. When I was in America with you last week and you kept telling people that I was an actor, I felt really embarrassed because I don't see myself as an actor anymore, and that actually makes me sad too, so boo-hoo.
Well, I did that in part because it's true, and in part because I was having a little fun with you. But it was funny because in a restaurant, you weren't sitting there. You'd gone to the bathroom or to have a smoke or something, but a guy came over. Lizzie was sitting there with me, and Lori was with Mom at that particular occasion. He came over and he said, I feel like you're someone I know that I've seen before. People are over there chatting and saying that you're someone well known. And I said, I'm really not. But I said, the guy that's out there smoking that cigarette, he's a famous British actor. And I said, have you ever seen Gosford Park? And of course, it's a guy. And he said, no. And I said, have you ever seen Inspector Lewis? And he said, no. I said, have you ever seen The Professor and the Madman? And he said, yeah, I saw that. I said, wow, he's in that. He's in that. And I said, and he's very famous. So the next thing you know, he's over there chatting you up. And then there was that other guy that was a little drunk and was wearing the shorts that were just a little too short.
Yeah, there was, I love those guys that you find in a bar, the ones that have been out all day and they become quite unpredictable. I'm always a bit nervous of them, but that I was in America and I had to remind myself that I was in America and no one really knows who I am there, which was a great relief compared to some parts of England where I'm notorious, Larry, for having views and stuff, which is really bad. We live in this world where views are the enemy here, that, where opinions are the things that cause harm, not knives and bombs. It's opinions that do the real damage to people. And, I am obviously, I'm sort of up there on some sort of watch list for having opinions, which other people have. They shared them. We share the opinions. They're like a virus. There's no vaccine to logic and reason and common sense. So you just become a danger to yourself and everyone else, apparently. But I don't care, because I'd rather have expressed what I thought than lie and be rich.
Well, I just sent this to Steve Bannon, who was just released from prison, as you know. But I sent him this quotation just by way of encouragement, and it's encouragement to you as well. Henry David Thoreau, who said this: under a government which imprisons any unjustly, the true place for a just man is in prison. And he replied, wow, wow, wow. And it is to your credit to be on watch lists, not for actual terrorism, but for actually condemning terrorism. And you were telling me off camera about something that's going on there today. Why don't you enlighten us?
Yeah, so I don't know whether Americans know, but I'm sure they picked up on it. Those that get their news from reliable sources rather than the mainstream media. We had 3 young girls were brutally murdered in a place called Southport in England 4 months ago, and immediately the first thing was the girls' names were forgotten. So that's always straight away a sign that something's not right, and nothing was released about the perpetrator of the crime. But we were guaranteed and we were told there was no terror-related aspect to this heinous crime where he butchered 3 young girls at a dance class and tried to kill 10 other people. And he's called Axel Radicabuna, I think his name is. I don't really want to learn his name because he's a vile, disgusting piece of shit. Sorry to be rude about it. But what happened in the preceding weeks was the mainstream media went into overdrive to try and present this thug, this murderous death cultist, as a really lovely guy. There are pictures of him when he was a kid. The only picture that was released is him as a child. Innocent. Even murderers look innocent when they're children, right? And so it was like, no, there's no terror element to this at all. Look at him. He stood in front of the TARDIS in the Doctor Who. He's just a lovely, cute little guy. He's from Wales or wherever the hell they told him from. But Axel Radicabuna is not from Wales. I'll tell you that for free. It doesn't take logic or reason to work that one out. So anyway, 4 months on, and his preliminary hearing is due ahead of his trial in January. And this preliminary hearing was delayed. Now, this preliminary hearing was delayed on the very same day that Tommy Robinson was put in prison, in solitary confinement, ironically, in a maximum security prison, which is the same maximum security prison as this murderous, it turns out, Islamist murderer was put in. So I have come to we all knew it was going to happen. People were arrested. The regime that runs this country is not a government. 4 out of 5 people didn't vote for it. It's a corrupt, vile, socialist regime. No one voted for it. They insisted that anyone who complained about this, because, this is not the first time we've seen Islamist maniacs murder and massacre people in this country. People knew, but they denied it. So people went out and protested. And instead of listening to the concerns about our open border and uncontrolled immigration, and particularly immigration from the Islamic world, those that protested were labelled far-right, and prison spaces were made for them. Actual crooks, actual paedophiles, actual violent criminals were released to make place in prison for people that had tweeted their dissatisfaction at our government's ability to control our borders and protected people, which is what they're paid to do. And today it is announced that they did indeed find a jihadi terror manual in his possession, and they did indeed find a plan to build a biological weapon as well. So we were all right. And I'm absolutely furious. And I just don't know what more the British people are going to do before they turn around and say this is abject corruption of the highest order, And it's just so sad that whenever we have one of these Islamic attacks in the UK, the victims are forgotten straight away. The perpetrator is somehow made to be a victim themselves, but they're just worshipping a death cult that loves death more than we love life. And I've just got to the point where, I will follow Jesus's teaching that every human life is sacred, and I will do that, but I will not follow the belief that every ideology is sacred too. And I think Islam is a death cult, and it's a rot on our society and our culture. And I think the sooner it's removed from Great Britain, or its most ardent followers are removed from Britain, the better.
Well, there's not much for me to add to that. You're spot on. Westerners are still, amazingly, it seems to me, Europeans less so than Americans, but are still very naive about Islam, extremely naive about Islam. Why do you think that is after 9/11 and, the shoe bomber and the bombing of the SS Cole and all of the things that have happened in between, Charlie Hebdo, the hyper cache, terrorist attack, all of those things, the Bataclan in Paris. Why do you suppose people are still so naive about Islam?
I think that there's an element of a good intention behind it, which is that people, it's not naive, it's more utopian to think that, cultures that are separated by hundreds of thousands of years of development and every single value, that they should try and rub along. Everyone should try and be friends. It's a very British way, to try and say that. But there's also a more sinister element to it, which was straight after 9/11. The word Islamophobia was coined in the British media, and it was used frequently in the British media, particularly by the bullshit broadcasting corporation, the BBC, of which still quite a large proportion of the older generation watch, thankfully much less of the younger generation watch. And this word Islamophobia started to creep in, and we were made to feel bad and in some way crazy if we didn't immediately respond to the values of a religion that celebrates child marriage, martyrdom, death for apostasy, first cousin marriage and Sharia law. If we didn't go, wonderful, what a brilliant idea, we were in some way racist or phobic, irrationally frightened of it. And that has permeated our culture in exactly the same way as constantly telling school children that the world's about to burn up in a massive ball of climate emergency fire. It's social engineering combined with suicidal empathy, as Gadsad calls it, and just huge amounts of misplaced compassion. Because I thought, and I know I'm not wrong about this, because I thought this when I was a child, I thought to myself, if you allow all of these people into your country, and that was small numbers when I was a child, at some point they're going to take over your country. And Islam is celebrating the fact that it's a minority in the United Kingdom at the moment, therefore it can claim victim status like any other minority in this country can claim victim status. And it's just waiting till 2065, I think their official date is, when Islam takes over whatever is left of this country as the majority culture and the majority religion. And at that point, you'll find your women, our grandchildren, my grandchildren will be covered up and will be subjected to first cousin marriages and will be subjected to child rape. And that's because nobody in this country has the balls to stand up and call a spade a spade. Call it what it is. It is a cult of death. It calls itself the final religion. It is a supremacist religion, and it's not nothing about it other than the fact that it's quite socially conservative. I mean, quite socially conservative is putting it mildly.
I've heard people say that, and I don't agree with that. But anyway, continue.
I just think we were brainwashed. It's a combination of trying to be nice and brainwashing and social engineering. That's what I think. What do you think?
Well, I think all of that is true, except that I don't think that Islam is conservative. I think it's strict. There's a difference. Child rape is not conservatism. Child marriages is not conservatism. Pillaging is not conservatism. Suicide bombing is not conservatism. I think it's very strict religion. But I think that the reason why there's this a naivete, or however you want to put it, this attitude towards Islam, sometimes willful ignorance, is because as Christianity has leaked out of the culture like air in a tire, what has gone with it is a theology of evil. So we don't really believe, I do, you do, but I think most people no longer have a theology of evil. So when they see someone thinking of 9/11, fly planes into the sides of buildings, the immediate, if you remember, the narrative after that was they're crazy. They have to be crazy. Only crazy people would do that. But see, as a Christian, I immediately understand why they would do it. I don't agree with them doing it, but they believe, as I do, that there are certain things worth dying for, and dying on behalf of my God is one of them. It's just that their God is fake. It's just that their God is a God of hate. It is a God invented by men for men. But I do believe, as they do, secularists don't believe this because they think this life is all you get and you better preserve it. But I believe, as they do, that there's absolute right and wrong, and that there are things worth laying your life down for, as Jesus himself modeled for us as a means of sacrifice. They just do it for very different reasons. So people assume that someone who chops up 3 little girls, that he's nuts, when he's a jihadi, and his religion says, no, you can do this to white girls. You can do this to non-Muslims. You can do it, and it's okay to do it. So I think frequently we're attributing things to insanity that really is, and you said this at the beginning, it's ideologically, or as we like to say on Ideas Have Consequences, ideologically driven. It's driven by idiots with bad ideas.
Yeah, it grabs one's brain in such a way that I'm so angry. I don't even know what to say, because Trump talked about the enemy within and that sort of thing, and the left go crazy for it. They're like, he's talking about you, all of you. You're the enemy within.
Even as they call him Hitler.
Yeah, as they call him Hitler. And we have the same thing, the enemy within, the enemy within. What he's talking about is he's saying, at least when you had pitched battles in wars, dreadful as they are, with our moral relativism that we have applied, as we spoke about the atomic bomb last time, even with that, there is within our culture a very large number of people, and they are in high positions of authority in this country, those that hate everything that Britain is and the West is. And they were taught this throughout school. And so I kind of don't blame them. But what's so infuriating is most sensible people just thought what are you talking about? That's crazy. But these people have worked hard to get into positions of authority, and our entire culture is captured by these radical ideologues who actually, I think, sympathize with Islamic terrorism, because they think, we deserve it. The West did such terrible things. And until we start taking hold of the narrative again and turning around and saying, colonialism was brilliant in many ways. In many ways it wasn't. But we need to have a balanced discussion about it. And as someone I love deeply once said to me, he said, they're always complaining about colonialism, but they're never complaining about the railways that we laid down for them and the system of law that we provided for them. It's always what we did wrong. And we live in a culture of victimhood. And I think what you were talking about rightly is that as Christianity wanes, it has to be replaced by something else. And the theology of good is vanishing fast, because that it's being replaced by the false theology that everyone is good, because they're not, and the Bible tells us that quite clearly. But what we lose, the really important thing that we lose, is what you say, which is we lose the theology of what is evil. And therefore, in the same way that we try to make excuses that all people are good and they just have mental health issues and that's why they massacre children, we lose the theology of what is evil, and we can't call it anything. It doesn't have a name. It's like racism. If you call everyone a racist, or if you call everyone Hitler, Hitler stops meaning anything. And then you get revisionist historians who actually say Hitler was a good guy. And you just end up in this, in a whirlpool where everyone is drowning in lack of reason and lack of common sense. And it feels just civilizationally like either the West bucks its ideas up big time, or the West is finished. And, no one will be able to say in the future you weren't warned.
Not to get too academic here, but have you ever read Hannah Arendt's Ikeman in Jerusalem?
No.
It's an interesting book. You would like it. You'd be fascinated with it. Hannah Arendt, she's a German philosopher, Jewish, not Orthodox, Reformed Jew, but She fled Hitler's Germany, I think, in 1933. She made the poor choice of going to France, and in 1940, she escaped France and came to the United States. And she was a very interesting woman. And she was sent by the New Yorker to cover the Ikeman trial. You remember, Ikeman in Argentina. They drugged him, put him on a flight, and he woke up on trial in Jerusalem. A very bad place to show up if you're a Nazi. And Ikeman had never killed anybody. He was chief of logistics for the Final Solution. It was his job to see to it that the trains ran on time to Auschwitz and Mauthausen and Buchenwald and these kinds of things. And so Hannah Arendt was there. She wrote a series of articles, I think, for the New Yorker, and those articles were turned into the book, Ikeman in Jerusalem, subtitled A Report on the Banality of Evil. And this is what she said, which is fascinating. Some think that, this has been debunked. It's actually biblical. But she said, the world that watched the trial didn't get it. The judges didn't get it. No one who was covering that trial really seemed to get what the lesson was here, because they all came away from the trial saying, Ikeman is crazy, he's insane, and that's why he did these terrible things. And she said, and yet 3 psychiatrists all evaluated him and said that he was normal. He was an adult when he joined the Nazi Party. He had never been a member of the Hitler Youth, so that his mind wasn't warped in childhood. He'd never read Mein Kampf. He wasn't particularly anti-Semitic. He had never actually killed anyone. What he was a regular guy who was ambitious and who was ideologically vacuous. And he wanted to climb the corporate ladder. And when he worked for an oil company, he was trying to climb that one. And when he became a member of the Nazi Party, he was determined to climb that one. And that meant just simply doing his job efficiently, meaning that she came away saying, to your point earlier, that all human beings have it within them to do these kinds of evil things. And when we adopt evil ideas, it's like gasoline on the flame of human nature. And that's what Islam is. It's gasoline on the flame of human nature. And whereas the Christian faith is, seeks to restrain our darker impulses. And the reason I find, Evelyn Waugh's statement so interesting, when someone said to him what an awful human being he was, and he said, I am. And yet imagine how much worse I would be if I were not a Christian. Don't you agree that, what you were saying about Islam just a moment ago, don't you agree that the ideology exacerbates human nature?
Yeah, I do. And also I think that, there's that, I don't know how I get to this point properly, but there's this idea that you don't give a lecture to someone who needs a hug, right? So that if you just break Christianity down,
I'll take a hug.
Yeah, but if you break Christianity down to its most what you would teach a school child, you would say we are all bad people. We have bad thoughts in our heads, and we do want to do them, and we will do them. We will do bad things in our lives, but someone absorbed all the pain in the world so that you could be forgiven for the sins that you will commit and have committed. And that is a constant reminder. I suppose it's the insertion, even if you don't believe in the Christian faith, if you take it on a purely academic, philosophical level, it's the insertion of a conscience where conscience doesn't exist necessarily. And as you say, this man can sit behind his abacus and his, train charts, inadvertently plotting the most efficient murder and destruction of millions of Jewish people, and not think twice about it. Whereas what Christianity seeks to do is it seeks to soothe first of all, it acknowledges the sin, which is the most important part of it, I think, which is to say you are sinful. We start from that position. But what Islam is doing is everything about it that I can understand from what I read and from what I'm absorbing as I'm trying to learn more and more about this religion, or this ideology is that it's not that any of those things. It's the complete opposite of it. It is the, you know, it's the justification for the baseness and the banal baseness of human torture and murder. And it's why you see on the left these people, they're going, he's Hitler, he's Hitler, he's Hitler, he's Hitler, he's Hitler. It's like, no, he's not Hitler. You know, this is not a mass murdering man. And, you know, with these generals coming forward and saying, oh, he's Hitler, he's terrible, he said he sympathised with Hitler. I'm like, well, why didn't you say it first time around then? You're a liar. Your heart is full of deceit. And the more I've been saying for ages that Islam is going to be the election topic of 2029 when it comes around, once the socialists have destroyed the economy and everything else. And I think at some point someone's going to have to face up to the fact that we have amongst us an ideology that for many, many reasons was kept totally separate from the Christian world, and was repelled and fought off at every available opportunity.
Well, let's turn to a different topic, a lighter topic, and one that apparently some people get off on. I don't understand this, but you called me yesterday and were telling me something. I was a little distracted about some woman who has an OnlyFans page for her feet.
Yeah, so the only reason I really come across her at all, she's called Lily Allen. She had a sort of minor pop career probably 15, 20 years ago. She's now, you know, a very unhappy 40-something-year-old divorced mum of however many children she's got now, by however many fathers. And she has obviously gone, you know, I can't make any money out of music anymore because I'm not, you know, you only have to look at some of Britney Spears' Instagram posts to know that it doesn't last. It doesn't last. And so she started an Instagram an OnlyFans for her feet, which I was sort of having a moral, not dilemma, but a sort of moral question with myself. It's like, obviously we understand that you see these things on social media every day, these girls going, but I'm going to do like 100 men in one day. Just sign up to my OnlyFans and you can see me do 100 guys in a day. And you're like, I'm sure there's some, I mean, I suppose it's...
that was circulating just this last week.
It was.
Somehow it ended up in my feed, but yes, that is true.
It ended up in everyone's feed, and I wonder why.
Okay.
As well. And
maybe it was an ad, I don't know.
She now wants to do 1,000 guys in a day, which just sounds painful. Anyway, I was trying to work out whether the OnlyFans phenomenon, which is essentially emblematic of, you know, the death of any form of motivation, which is just like, well, I'll just make money out of selling, you know, I'll just make money out of porn, essentially. You know, it's easier. I can make money in my sleep, as they say in Les Miserables. So I was trying to work out whether there was an acceptable level of OnlyFans, and does selling your feet for cash, do you have a problem with that?
You know, we were talking about merchandise, you know, that we need merchandise for WTF. And by the way, we are working on, you know, because you have that brilliant Union Jack and the lapel pin in the shape of a heart. So we're going to do it. Yes, you grab it, and then so people can know where they can get that. But then we're going to make one that's half American flag and half Union Jack for WTF. You know, I'm an American, you're a Brit. But I don't see why we don't, you know, do some kind of feet thing. You know, I have lovely feet. You probably have lovely feet. Why not?
My feet are
We're capitalists.
My feet are horrible. So here we have the
there's one.
Oh,
see, we could sell that.
Please, people are watching.
We could sell that.
Look at this. Don't look at his feet. Look at this. So that is, this is our little beautifully made pin, and it's our way of saying F you, WTF to the Wokesters. And I ordered them.
It's on this box.
It's on the Coach stores, and I I came up with the idea because I thought, the Brits are so modest that maybe just having a little symbol of saying I love my country might be good. Anyway, we got 1,000 in or something like that, and we sold them all in 2 days. So we're getting 5,000 more in, coming in, I think, on Wednesday, so people can order them again. But yeah, we're going to do one for you, and we're going to build this culture stores because we think it's a really good idea where we can sell merchandise which is associated with people or shows like our show, and people can say, I like that and I want to, be part of it, and it's a way that they can be part of it. And if we see someone walking down the road, we can immediately go, like a rainbow flag in the olden days with the gay community. You can go, oh, I'm safe there. So you can go and give them a big hug and say, welcome to loving the country. So yeah, we've got yours is in order. But I mean, selling feet, your feet, I wouldn't pay for. Sorry, man. Sorry. I'd pay for locks.
Would you pay for
hair.
feet? Would you pay for anyone's? You'd pay for locks.
I tell you what, I would join your OnlyFans for. Someone with really nice hands. Maybe if Laurie put some nice nail varnish on and she just stroked through your hair in close up. I'd subscribe to that for $1 a month.
Would you? Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready.
What appendage of yours should we be selling on OnlyFans?
Definitely not my feet, because my feet have on very early on in my public school, which is private school here, career, I had someone stamped on my big foot while I was playing a game called Harrow Football, which is a really pointless thing. And my big toenail on my left foot, it doesn't really exist. So I'm not sure foot fetishing is going to work for me. What could work? Lizzie says I have nice lips. Maybe I could do lips. Hey, lips? No, don't worry. It's fine.
Well,
you just got back from a spa.
You could do like a Rolling Stones kind of lapel pin. The lips. You could do that, and I don't see why that wouldn't work. I remember when I was a kid, my parents talking about a televangelist. I think his name was. Help me here, Jonathan. You may not be old enough. I'm not sure. A guy by the name of Ernest Angsley, I think was his name. Anyway, he was a televangelist. He was a bit of a crook, but he was selling online washcloths that had the image of his handprint on it. And you order it and you put it on whatever is ailing you. And he's prayed over it. And it's like he's saying, you can't meet him in person. No problem. Order the prayer cloth and you get it and you put it on whatever's ailing you, and boom, you're healed.
Maybe we should do a version of that with a picture of Allah, and you can put it on someone you don't really like. Why did balloons go up? Was that Jonathan or me?
I don't know. I have no idea. Is it your birthday and we didn't know it?
Hang on, did I?
Your birthday's only 2 days after mine, so it's not your birthday. Yeah. I don't know what caused that, but I like it. It's fine. I like it. It's a nice special effect. It was completely inappropriate to what you were discussing, but okay, that's no problem. What did you think of your visit here? You were here last time we did this show. We were sitting on my porch, and by the way, I should say that as I am speaking, the lift that went through the roof of my boathouse, it has now been removed.
I need to tell the story first because this is funny. So, I mean, I think that
funny to you.
So, I'm at Larry's house, and Larry obviously is the consummate host, and as has said that his house should be a haven. He feels that it's a gift from God to provide people with space to think and meditate, talk, and which it very much is. And then one day there was an American football game on, which we knew was going to be pretty hardcore. It was Alabama versus Tennessee, was it?
That's correct. Yep.
And as I've said to the listeners in England, it's the most complicated game in the world, American football. The Americans love rules. But we were sat there and said, would you like to go out on the boat before lunch and look around the lake? Apparently this lake is the poor lake compared to the rich lake, which is called, what's the rich lake called? What's the
The
rich
one
lake
near
called?
the richer lake, the one
Martin, Lake
where
Martin.
Lake Martin, which is way more expensive. That is
So
correct.
it's so absolutely opposite of how Britain would work. So the crowded lake would be really cheap, and the quiet lake like yours would be really expensive. Anyway, so we go on the boat. Michael, Larry's eldest son, who's a very, he's a thoughtful lawyer, very, serious but funny. We go. They have these lifts that they lower the boats. It's called a pontoon boat. There's no speedboat. It's like just a pontoon that goes along, and people can have beers on. It's lovely. And we thought we'd have a look around, the nice houses on the lake. And Michael, in his rush to get everyone happy and on board with kids and various, accidentally left the boat lift on. So as we were scuttling off, we came back and we saw this. Everyone was going, "Oh my God, look at the storm damage to your roof, Larry." But it turned out that the boat lift had actually decided to not stop at the top. He just carried on going up through the roof. And you were asking me how I felt about my trip. I was sent as the vanguard of the, let's see in what level of bad mood you're in.
Yeah, because
So
I wasn't on the boat. I stayed back.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the porch, and then you came.
I then came and you did what would now be called child abuse, even though Michael's not old, which was you said, "Okay, son, it's okay. You just need to sort that problem out. I don't want the boat to get damaged in a storm because it's now freely floating in the water. Deal with that, make that good, and we're all good. Thank you." Which would now be seen as child abuse in any other country in the Western world. What did I make of my trip? I'm constantly, and I don't know, I still can't get my head to the word of it, but you have a sense that you're not, that the interference from the government is, it's sort of regrettable. They don't want to interfere in your life. If they're forced to, they will, but they don't want to. You get that very much the sense, and it's like, this is your playground, go and play here. Drive over there, go to Tennessee, walk up that strip. Oh, wow, look at all those lights. Who cares about how noisy it is? Let's, just celebrate the sort of enormity of stuff. I know that you were saying that your views on Nashville are going downhill a bit. But that is the difference between Britain and America. In Britain, the law, the authorities, the boring red tape, the bureaucracy, it's everywhere. You can't go anywhere without having to engage with the state in some way, or a private company that the state has subletted its responsibilities out to. And in America, just geographically through the accident geography, is just such a wonderfully optimistic and hopeful place. And that's not to say that there aren't problems in America. There are many, many problems in America. But I always leave it's lovely to meet. I met one of your hugely wealthy friends, and I couldn't tell that he was a wealthy man at all. I love that. And in England, you do still get that kind of old school thing of people who are rich. You wouldn't know, but it was just so nice to, spend an evening with just very polite people. And charming people who really care about how you feel and how you think. And the emphasis is always on the other person. And in England, the emphasis is always on, why are my rights being infringed upon? And I'm guilty of this as well. So I suppose it's that, it's a difference between a nation which is still, it's in its puberty years, isn't it, really, America? And England is in its sort of grumpy old age. And I think I sense that a bit, and I'm drawn more to it for that reason. So I loved my visit. I will always love my visit, and I love meeting Americans because they inspire me in ways that some British people just don't.
Well, I think that you bring a perspective that's really important to Americans, hence the value of a show like this, because I've always maintained that Britain, continental Europe, they are America fast forwarded. If you want to know what's coming, you need to go there. You need to get a glimpse of it. And so for you, for instance, to come to the United States, and let's just say, taking what we were talking about earlier about Islam, you would have a perspective on Islam that people in my part of the country overwhelmingly would know nothing about. And that is in part because there are virtually no Muslims that they engage. That what they know of Islamic terrorism is there. It's something that happened on Westminster Bridge. It's something that happened in Paris. It's something that happened in New York in 2001. That's their knowledge of something like that. And you're bringing a perspective it's like you have been, into battle. You're coming back from Okinawa and you're saying to people in basic training, let me tell you what's actually happening out there.
It's a good analogy, because the person who's coming back from Okinawa and the person who's leaving, it's always in every war film, isn't it? You know, it's in every single war film. There's people getting off a plane, and there's a scene in the platoon, there's a scene in Hacksaw Ridge, there's scenes in every one of those war films of the grunts going out and the vets coming back. And they always cross eyes with each other, and an untold story is set between them. And Britain and Europe, which has been totally invaded by Islam, is learning to live with my main objection, and please forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but when I'm upset, I do, is that, Britain has had a warning of this for such a long time, and no one will do anything about it. So when Trump turns around and goes, I'm going to introduce a travel ban from certain Islamic countries, he's doing that for exactly the reasons that we should have done that. We should have said, we will not take people in from this country. We shouldn't take Palestinians into the United Kingdom, for example. We just shouldn't. And there's a huge movement now to say, look at these poor Palestinians. And my heart goes out to every innocent Palestinian woman and child, man, woman and child, who has died as a result of the actions of Hamas and Israel's response. But these people are raised in a different way, and we have through our sort of overbearing tolerance and guilt brought around by these sort of Marxist things, the critical race theory and diversity, equity and inclusion. We hate ourselves so much that we would rather be destroyed by them than we would stand up and say that we have a covenant with our children. We need to pass on a better world than the one we received. In England, we seem to hate ourselves so much. The birth rate in England has dropped now. The IFR in England has dropped to its lowest ever. So it's now 1.44. So that means that every 100 grandparents are going to have 50 grandchildren in something like 50 years or something like that. It's just so sad. It's the end of our of Europe and England, and I just sort of have a feeling that one should put up a fight, because, when I say a fight, I don't mean like physically remove and assault and accost, but I think we should make Western democracies inhospitable places for people that cover up their women, inhospitable places for all of these values that we discussed. I think we should do that, because if you don't do that, then England's not going to be England. And I mean, it's a toss of a coin now whether England's going to be England ever again. And then people talk about, radio presenters, leftist radio presenters going, well, England's always been a nation of immigrants. I'm like, so is everywhere always been a nation of immigrants. Right back until creation, it was a nation of immigrants. Who did the Garden of Eden belong to before it belonged to Adam and Eve? Whose land were they colonizing? God's. It drives me mad, the way they deal with that. So, yeah, I hope that when Trump gets elected in, which he's going to get elected in, that he's very strong in the principles of protecting the culture and traditions of America. And those culture and traditions are different to the ones you get in Europe because they're written down. This is what we stand for. It's written down here. Life, liberty, and the pursuit.
Yeah, well, you have to be able to say we hold these truths to be self-evident, right? I mean, to me, that's the litmus test of getting into the country. Of course, we know that Muslims believe that they can lie so long as it's to advance the cause of Allah. But, I'm wondering if in Britain, if your experience, you'd mentioned before the comment, my tweet about Nashville. And, that was your first time to Nashville. And I still like Nashville, but Nashville is turning blue, bluer all the time. And that is because you have this flight out of blue states into red states. And Nashville, now not Tennessee, not the whole of Tennessee. That's a different story. But Nashville's losing some of its southern charm because of that. So you have people who are fleeing blue states. Many of them, not all. In fact, one of the guys I was just talking to about the boat lift, he happened to mention that a lot of people who are moving onto these lakes are from New York and Boston and Chicago and so forth, California. But he says many of the ones he's encountering are people who hate blue state policy. But there are others who, it seems to me, they're fleeing those things, but they bring some of those same attitudes with them, and they never connect their voting habits with the policies that they're trying to escape. So they end up, making a mess of the places where they move to. And to me, that's what I'm feeling in Nashville. I feel like that's happening to that city. But is there a similar phenomenon in Britain? I mean, where people are moving into the countryside? I mean, you did. Are there other people who are doing that? They're just saying, enough of the city. I want to buy a farm and get out of the city.
Yeah, there are a lot. And I think it's the idea of, the left always likes to talk about settler colonialism and all this sort of stuff. And there was a thing on the London Underground yesterday, and no one saw the irony of it. Certainly the woman who posted it, which was a group of female immigrants to the UK singing something about Palestine and the fact that Palestine will be free and you're not welcome here. This is our home. And I'm like, does the same apply here to London?
I saw that. It was you probably retweeted it or something, because I did see that.
Does this apply? But it doesn't for some reason. And as you say, this is the problem with settler colonialism. And I don't think Britain. I think what Britain did was, my mum was a huge knowledge on the Belgian Congo, and she was appalled by the way Belgium behaved in the Congo. But Britain, by and large, if you look at the countries that Britain colonized and then turned into a commonwealth, those countries have done pretty well. And I think what we did was we went out and we took our values, and then we came back and we gave back the independence to these people. But what's happening with a leftist is what they do is they go, I hate this world that I live in. I'm going to go over here and ruin that one instead. They don't ever think, I'm going to learn from my mistake. I'm going to learn from what happened with, mask mandates for children in primary school in Massachusetts or New York, and, the appalling treatment of the handling of the COVID stuff. They will come into cities where bad ideas are, the desire of the globalists is to get us all into cities. That's what they want. They want us in cities, upset, so that we will take very draconian and authoritarian rule, and bad ideas can begin to fester. They're much harder to fester when my nearest neighbor is, he wouldn't hear me if I shouted, put it that way. And when I go after this conversation, go down to the local pub to catch up with people and hear what they have to say about this horrible development in news, those people's lives are not changing because they have lived here for a lot of time. But the people that are coming out here, like me, are the people that are so fed up of London that they're not bringing liberal values. They're coming here to find their country again. And I think I've had a message from a guy called Chris this morning, who I'm friends with, who says that him and his wife are leaving in December. And he said, we're never going back. And I get messages all the time.
Leaving the country?
No, just leaving London, leaving the cities.
Gotcha.
The cities, as I've said, vast swathes of East London are not recognisable as British on any level. But we're told that we must celebrate it and welcome it because it's diversity. Very strange word to use, that one, the left co-opt. I can understand how they would try and hide abortion behind reproductive health care or female reproductive rights, but diversity, when it's the exact opposite of diversity, is a strange one. But people seem to buy it. You know, it's in everywhere.
You know, I'm chuckling here because I'm remembering as you use the word diversity, when I finished graduate school and I was teaching in kind of our equivalent of a Harrow or an Eton here, I was sent against my will to a diversity conference, and it was called Celebrating Diversity. Now, this is 25 years ago, so this isn't last week. This was kind of when this stuff was really kind of just getting cranked up, and I'm sitting there with all of these other people, and up front is a white woman and a black man. And they said, hey, Phil, hey, Angela, let's see what we've got in the crowd here. Sounds like a great idea. Let's see what we have here. Let's celebrate diversity among us here. How many white people? You're white, sir. Yeah, another one. Yes, thank you. How many more? Celebrate you. How many women do we have? There's a girl. I see ya. And they just kind of kept going. But then it got increasingly absurd. And then it became, so we have heterosexuals here. You're a heterosexual. Gotcha. I heard you over there. Yes, sir. How many lesbians? And then it just kept going and going and going, as you can imagine. So I'm sitting there and they're saying, we celebrate diversity because that's the world we live in, and our strength is our diversity. And I'm sitting there thinking, if I were to say here, you left me out. I'm a cannibal.
I was about to say that.
I'm a cannibal, and it is great to meet all of you. It is great to meet all of you. Celebrating diversity for diversity's sake makes no sense at all. Our strength is found in our commonality. It's our ability that the two of us are friends, in spite of the fact, not because of, I'm American, you're British. You come from a very different family experience than my own, but we find, in that Venn diagram, we overlap and we say, yes, Lawrence Fox and we hold these truths to be self-evident. These are things that we both hold dear, and they're the basis of a friendship, but they're also the basis of a society. And without them, you destroy the fabric of society.
100%. Jonathan, that's the trailer when he starts talking about the diversity conference. That's the trailer, and that needs to happen. Yes. What is diversity then? So I always thought diversity was the fact that we are rooted in the same ground, but our views may differ. That's what I thought diversity was. I didn't think diversity was we're rooted in the same ground, but look, hey, you're brown, so you must have a whole different set of views than me because you're brown. Yes. And it's like, no, or gay. And I tell you that I have a huge sort of sub-fan group of gay friends and gay people on Twitter who support me a lot when I burn the child mutilation cult flag, because they're sick of being lumped into that diversity bracket as well. I think diversity is you just apply the leftist rule to everything, which is whatever they're saying is the exact thing that they're doing. So when they say diversity is our greatest strength, you go, diversity is pure evil and must be completely removed from the world as soon as possible of anything other than opinion.
Yeah, well, I was sitting here as you're talking because you're so right. I was looking up 1 Corinthians 12, and I won't read it here, but
why not read
I would point people. Well, I don't. It's too long. I don't want to read the whole thing here, but I'll give you just a little sampling of it. For just as the body is one and has many members, all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slave or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit. For the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less part of the body. And if the ear would say, because I'm not an eye, I don't belong to the body, that would not make it any less part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would be the sense of hearing? If the whole body were an ear, where would be the sense of smell? But as it is, God has arranged the members of the body, each one of them, as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, yet one body. So the point being, the biblical view of diversity is like, I think of a house. You have many people with different skills that are at work, but all building, striving for the same thing. So you have plumbers, you have electricians, you have roofers, you have carpenters, you have guys who are pouring the concrete, but all towards building the same thing. And that's what we mean when we say we hold these truths to be self-evident. That's the brilliance of the American, idea. And it is an idea that we're building a society that we are overcoming the fact that he's German and I'm of Italian origin and that guy over there is of Polish origin. But we're able to overcome all of our differences while maintaining some of those differences, maintaining some of those traditions. But we're able to say we believe that these are the ideals, the rights that were inalienable rights that were given to us by God. And we're going to build our society on that. And when you bring people into a society, Confucius said this, he said, he who sets to work on a different strand destroys the whole fabric. And that's really what we're talking about. It's an alien culture. It's an alien psychology. There are people who come in who do not share those values. But from a Christian point of view, this is what diversity is. Diversity is where there are many parts, many members, many gifts, but all working towards a common goal.
Unlike the parasitic leftists, which you've got to take your hat off to them, because they're so good, is to each according to his, ability, to each according to his need, or whatever it is. So they bastardize this idea and they reverse it and they stick it on its head. And what it is basically turning around, the encouragement of God's word to me, what I hear there is know your strength and work on your strength. Don't be jealous of someone else's strength, and don't, wander into a field that you're not good at plowing. It's our Peterson thing, stick to counterculture, don't necessarily go into there, or, anyone who tries to sort of jump sideways. Nigel Farage goes from like immigration to culture. It doesn't always work very quickly. But the left is so brilliant, they turn around and go, yes, no, we agree with you. We agree.
Yeah.
So let's control that. Let's control it. Let's choose who's going to be the eyes, who's going to be the ears. And actually, one of the most frustrating things about the scriptures for me, and I find really upsetting about it, is I never get the answer I want. The answer I want is you're right.
That's so true, isn't it? That's why sometimes we avoid prayer. That's often why we avoid reading scripture or going to church and hearing a sermon, because we might feel conviction about something we are doing that we want to hold on to.
Yeah, you want to feel right, you want to feel special, you want to feel all the things. And what you get in return is, no, it's more work. It's more work. And then the left go, it is more work. You do need to do more work on your racism, you racist bastard, white Christian bastards, And what they do is they're so much better than we are. Instead of coming out and saying, look, this is the word that we follow, this is the word that we trust, we have a faith, instead of, what you were saying about proclamation of one's faith, they turn around and go, we proclaim the faith for you. You human beings, you be the eyes, we'll do diversity. Diversity is a brilliant thing. And you just turn around and go, after a while you turn around and go, this is a merry-go-round where one of the bearings has gone wrong on the wheels and everyone's starting to throw up on it at the moment. And that's where we are. And, as you say, the back to the analogy of us walking past America, the UK walking past America on its way back to its C-130, back to the UK, we're looking and going, you guys aren't ready to fight. But actually, I think America is ready to fight, because America knows the issues. Red State America knows the issues. It knows. I was saying to someone the other day, I don't think Trump is a Republican, and I don't think MAGA is a political movement. I just don't think it is. I think it's. I'd imagine there'd be just as many Democrats would be on board with it as Republicans, actually. And I think MAGA is a different thing. You and I talk about these things in using the framework of spiritual war, but actually MAGA is something totally different. It's about a reclamation of a cultural imperative, which is what I said earlier: the covenant between one generation and the next, that you provide a better opportunity for them to succeed and have and go through less hardship than you went through. Well, the left, you're going, no one needs to go through any hardship. It's fine. We don't need to suffer. It's cool. You don't even need to suffer at all. You're depressed? Die. We'll kill you. You see, no more pain.
It's true.
They love death. Because they are going. They don't think there's anything after beyond our existence. They don't think that. So they just think, well, make this time that you have on this earth as happy as possible for you. If you're a moron and you happen to get cancer for some reason, just die. Don't fight it. Don't put your life in the hands of God, which has some meaning. Put your hands in the life of me and my nitrogen chamber, because I can save you and your grandfather, because he's a drain on the family, isn't he? These people.
Well, you kind of.
Yeah.
In your comments about MAGA and it being less of a political movement than it is really a cultural movement, you're touching on something that I'm curious as to your opinion about this. I have believed for more than a decade that really what we see is not so much a political divide. It's a divide that has political ramifications, but it's a cultural divide. It's a sociological divide that is rooted in at least where the left is concerned. And let me say this at the front end. Why I say it's less ideological is because the leftist ideology is so fluid. I mean, they'll just do whatever they're told. Okay, we're now going to lop off the sex organs of little boys. Okay, we're on board with that. Okay, now we're in favor of open borders. Didn't think I was in favor of open borders, but okay, we'll have open borders now. Now we want to legalize marijuana. Okay, we're on board. I mean, they'll just do whatever they're told. I think that leftist ideology is much more rooted in a sociological phenomenon where they feel so much condescension for the common people. They will not align themselves with someone on the political right because they deem them to be less sophisticated, less urbane, less, they don't belong to the club and they don't want to associate with them. So no matter what it is that MAGA embraces, the left is going to repudiate it, even when it's something that might be in their own political interest. I mean, open borders is a benefit to no American. It might be to those people in power because they want to create a one-party state. But I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. This is going to destroy your communities long term. I mean, that's what you're talking about. It's happening in London. So it's sociological, don't you think?
It's going to destroy your communities if it's done deliberately and malevolently. It's not going to destroy your communities if it's done naturally and organically. It's the same as the RFK thing about saying if you reframe the climate change debate around protecting habitats rather than capturing carbon, everyone would be on board with it. And immigration is the same deal. It's like, of course, immigration is good for a country. It's good. I like.
Well, go back. Less about immigration or open borders. My point is that even on topics that Democrats have traditionally been for or against, when those are adopted by Republicans, or rather by MAGA, for instance, patriotism. I mean, the Democratic Party has been historically patriotic until the last 25 years
anymore. They're not. These people are not Democrats. It's just a name that goes. It's like Pelosi said. A blue balloon with a D on it would win in this district. It's not. See,
I'm trying to force you to answer my question, though.
Okay,
come on, help me out here.
Okay, I'll answer it. What's the question?
Don't you agree that this is more of a sociological thing because they don't want to be associated with people they don't believe are as sophisticated or as urbane or as good as they are.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel this in Britain too.
I don't like the word sociological because I don't know what it means. Which is the thing.
Say cultural.
Yes, cultural works. I think it's a much baser human emotion, which is greed and jealousy and envy and power and control. So, I imagine that in Soviet Russia, the dachas that were built for the good communists, they didn't want a bunch of people doing the fields in front of them. They just wanted a perfect field in front of them, and then they could wander down to the lake with their mistress and, behave in whichever way they wanted to behave, but they didn't want to be around people. The thing about elitist leftists is they don't want to be around people at all. They hate people, actually, because every single time they bump into a person, they have to have a conversation about what they think. And that's the fundamental problem with them, which is like, we talked about this before, but it's why Barack Obama standing on is going, you got to vote, you black folk have got to vote for the black folk. And Joe Biden says, you don't vote for me, you ain't black. It's like, they're just the exact thing they accuse all of us of, which is we want to protect our culture for everybody, and they want to protect our culture for them. And it doesn't matter what culture it is, because they can, as you say, they're a blob. They can maneuver themselves into any worldview as long as they get a nice view from their window to the pool and no one is sitting on their deck chair.
Yeah, they hate people, but they hate the common people most of all.
Which is the
They don't want anything to do with them. They don't want a thing in the world to do with them, and that's why they don't mind oppressing them. That's why they don't mind. Go ahead.
That's why I loved it when the nurse came round to see your mum, and my experiences of racial interactions that aren't in kind of high profile places in America. Like, nobody even notices or cares what colour someone's skin is in a normal everyday interaction. The only time they're ever going to care about it is if they've been indoctrinated to think about it. Which is where cities come into play. And it's like, well, how can we measure this? Does this work? Does maybe this black person didn't? They have to start trying to explain why every single time they've interfered in other people's lives in the name of goodness, they've created more slaughter, more massacre, and more death. We've had it, Trump's been done for it over the Wales. I know a woman here called June Mummery. Hi, June, if you're watching. And she has campaigned endlessly to say that these offshore wind farms are killing fish migration stuff. So in the name of saving the planet, they are making a bunch of fish who over billions of years have got little sensors on their head going, we go that way now, I think it's getting colder. The months are getting colder. I think we go this way and then we spawn somewhere here. But instead, they've just stuck these huge power lines out. They're going, and the fish don't know where they're going. So in the name of trying to do something good, they always do something bad. And therefore, the Conservatives' job is to conserve, is to go, hey, guys, can you prove to me that this is a better idea than the other idea? Or instead of doing what the Conservative does, which is turn around and go, oh, yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, we're terrible. The fuel of the cars, it's all dreadful. But actually, they should turn around and go, is sticking, 300 wind turbines out to sea off the coast of Massachusetts a good idea for the whales? Is that helping the whales? And you end up in the same situation you always end up in, which is whenever you try and solve a problem which is not man-made, you always end up with a man-made disaster. And I think that's, my limited knowledge of the Bible. I have a wonder whether that's why, and I want to kind of finish on this because I promised to go and speak to someone at 6:30, is that when it says in the Bible, and Lizzie and I would argue about this, I imagine, we don't really argue, we debate, but it's this idea when it says, and God gave man dominion over the animals of the field and the fish in the sea. Do you know what I mean? Which is say, you come ahead of them. Yes. And maybe that's something we should start remembering, that a lot of conservative people also want to conserve fish stocks, also want to conserve the environment, also want to conserve the planet. In fact, that is their main desire. And what you're fighting is radical people that want to destroy it in the name of vaingloriousness.
Well, I mean, hunters will tell you. I mean, my part of the country, there's a lot of hunting that goes in, and we're really getting into big time hunting season here. They are the biggest conservationists, precisely because they want the stock to be there, the game to be there when they hunt, and so they're very pro conservation. Same with fishing. Big conservationists pushing that. But let me ask you a separate question as we finish, because this is the last episode of WTF, World According to, singular, I guess, World According to Taunton and Fox. It's the last episode of WTF that will air before the election.
Oh, God.
What happens?
Isn't it?
What happens on Tuesday?
Trump wins. They can't hide it. He wins. The announcement's made pretty quickly. There's a huge amount of rioting as a result of it.
So you think it'll be one day? He'll be announced that day as the
No, I
winner.
don't think it'll be announced that day, but I don't think they'll be waiting 2 weeks, because I just can't see that. I can't see a sudden midnight jump or a 1 a.m. jump. The guy is absolutely smashing it. She makes Joe Biden look like a guy you wouldn't want to get into a debate in Oxford with, you know. So they've messed up badly. He's going to win. It's, you know, he's not the greatest thing in the world, Trump. He's a messenger, isn't he, of something. He's going to win. The Democrats are going to go crazy, and, you know, let's see whether they want to really up the ante in their worship of death, because they're no different from other ideologies that we've just spoken about this evening. So I hope that Trump's back in. We know he's back in. People are emboldened to defend themselves, because I think there will be mass rioting. They'll create another race hoax murder. You know, we'll be into all of that stuff until January. And America, what happens? So you tell me, actually, so the English audience know, who is in charge from the election result until the inauguration?
Well, in theory, it's Joe Biden. He remains president until a new president is inaugurated. But as Musk has rightly pointed out, and as we've been saying for a very long time, I certainly have been saying it for many years, there's some kind of machine behind Joe Biden. But he theoretically is president until such time as the new president is inaugurated. So between the election and inauguration, a president is putting his administration together. And presumably you're already doing that. You're making decisions about who's going to be part of your cabinet and this kind of thing. But I think, I hope you're right. I hope that that's the way it goes, minus the rioting. But I just think that Democrats are prepared to burn the country to the ground before they will allow Trump to take office. And so I'm not expecting election day. I'm expecting election week. But I would love to be wrong. I would absolutely love to be wrong when it comes to that. I think we have to be prepared for that possibility. And I sort of feel a little bit like right now I'm speaking to, I'm a coach and I'm speaking to my team, and we're up, by 3 touchdowns, and there's just a couple of minutes left in the game. And I'm saying, guys, let's not celebrate until the clock hits 0. We need to be vigilant. We need to be ready for absolutely anything. And we need to be ready for the fact that these are individuals who have no compunction about doing absolutely anything.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the ashes, they're happy to burn the country to the ground and roll over the ashes. I was speaking to someone who is quite heavily involved in the Trump re-election campaign yesterday, and they said that he knows he's learned all of the mistakes that he made last time in terms of picking his team. So that team comes in pretty hard. So I just have a feeling that we have had enough of the madness. America has had to take the mantle of the cradle of democracy off Britain, and America is going to have to look after it like the ring in Lord of the Rings. And it'll be down to America to guide us through this, which will be the most sticky period in modern human history, and that's I don't think that's underestimating it. It's been 80 years since people went to war with each other, and I think that Trump is absolutely dead set against murder and needless war, and he's all about creating American deterrence again. And I think that we can only pray that he comes back into power peacefully, because if he doesn't, it's going to be a civil war in America. That's what's going to happen.
Well, I think the image of a battle for Middle Earth is a great way to end this particular episode of WTF, the world according to Taunton and Fox. And when we come back next week, we should have some clarity at that point.
We will. And I'd like to also remind the audience that Larry's a complete moron with time things, because England decided for some strange reason, it's very dark outside now, it will be very dark if the clocks will move forward an hour or whatever. It's dark in England in the northern hemisphere at this time of year, but we move our clocks forward. So Larry calls me at 4 o'clock and goes, "Where are you?" And I go, "Larry, you're 2 hours early." So I managed to get everyone out the
other direction. Instead of going forward an hour, I went back an hour. So that really messed us. That really messed us up.
I possibly may never forgive you. Well, I love
Listen, brother, it's good to see you. Take care, and let's hope for a really good outcome to this election. This has been another episode of WTF.
The world according to Taunton and Fox.